You've had this moment before. You wake up at 3 a.m., heart pounding, and for 2 full seconds, you genuinely don't know if what just happened to you was real. Maybe someone you love was gone. Maybe you were falling. Maybe you were somewhere impossible, doing something impossible, and it felt more real than your own bedroom does right now. And then it fades. Within minutes, most of it is gone, like water running through your fingers. You're left holding nothing but a feeling, a residue, something you can't quite name, but it colors your entire morning anyway. Here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. Every single night, without asking your permission, your brain paralyzes your body, floods you with hallucinations, deletes your ability to think logically, and then wipes most of the evidence before morning. If a person did that to you while you were awake, you'd call it an attack. Your own mind does it to you on purpose, every night, for your entire life, and you've never once filed a complaint. So in this video, we're going to answer the question you've probably never actually stopped to ask. Not what your dreams mean. Forget that. That question has already misled humanity for thousands of years, and we'll get into exactly how. We're going to ask something deeper. Why does your brain even bother building this strange, expensive, illogical machine in the first place? And by the end, you'll understand why some of the most brilliant ideas in human history, a scientific breakthrough, a legendary song, weren't found while someone was awake and trying hard. They were handed over in a dream, fully formed, like a gift from a part of yourself you don't normally get to meet. Let's go back to 1952, a sleep lab at the University of Chicago. A researcher named Eugene Aserinsky did something people thought was pointless. He stayed up all night just to watch other people sleep. Back then, the assumption was simple. Sleep meant the brain switched off, like a light bulb. Nothing happening. Lights out. A biological blackout that lasted 8 hours and then reset itself. But when he hooked electrodes to a volunteer's head, something strange showed up. After a stretch of calm, quiet sleep, the brain suddenly lit up like it was wide awake, solving a hard problem, maybe even more active than during certain waking hours. And underneath closed eyelids, the eyes were darting back and forth, fast, like they were tracking something only the sleeper could see, something moving quickly across a scene only one person had access to. He called it REM, rapid eye movement. And when he woke people up right in the middle of it, almost every one of them said some version of the same thing. I was just having the most vivid dream of my life. Not a foggy impression, not a vague sense of unease. A full, detailed sensory experience, complete with color, sound, and emotion. So what is actually happening in your skull during those minutes? 4 things, and each one is more unsettling than the last once you actually think about it. First, your body goes completely limp. Your brainstem sends out a chemical signal that locks your major muscles down, a process scientists call REM atonia. This isn't a glitch, it's protection. Without it, you'd physically act out whatever your dream tells you to do, which is a genuinely dangerous idea when you consider some of the things your brain comes up with at 4 a.m. There's actually a rare condition called REM sleep behavior disorder, where this locking mechanism fails, and people have been documented punching walls, falling out of bed, even injuring the person sleeping next to them, all while acting out a dream they have no conscious control over. That's how seriously your brain takes this safety feature. When it breaks, the results can be genuinely dangerous. Second, your visual cortex lights up and starts generating hallucinations so vivid they can feel more real than your actual eyesight. That's why dream colors can feel almost too bright, too sharp, too much, like someone turned the saturation all the way up on the world. Some researchers believe this is partly why certain dreams stay with you for years, while entire weeks of your waking life disappear without a trace. The intensity of the experience, even though it's manufactured, gets treated by parts of your brain as significant. Third, and this is the one worth sitting with for a second, the part of your brain responsible for logic, judgment, self-control, the prefrontal cortex, goes quiet, almost offline. That's why riding a giant chicken to get bubble tea feels completely normal while it's happening. You don't question a single part of it. You don't stop and think, wait, chickens don't grow that large? Or, why is this chicken wearing sunglasses? You only start questioning it the second you wake up, and even then, it takes you a moment to remember that it wasn't real. And fourth, your brain drops the chemical needed to lock things into long-term memory. Specifically, norepinephrine, one of the key chemicals your brain relies on to stamp an experience as important enough to keep. It's essentially deciding, in real time, that none of this is worth saving. That's why 10 minutes after waking up, the dream you thought you'd remember forever has already started slipping away. And by lunchtime, it's often gone completely, leaving behind nothing but a mood you can't explain to your coworkers. Sit with that for a second. Every night, you build an entire private universe, live inside it, feel real emotion inside it, sometimes grieve inside it, sometimes fall in love inside it, and then your own brain deliberately throws most of it away before you're even fully awake. What kind of system is worth building at that cost, night after night, only to demolish it before sunrise? That question is exactly what scientists have spent the last 70 years trying to answer. And for most of human history before that, people didn't have brain scanners. So they filled the gap with belief instead. Because a mystery this large has never once been left alone by the human mind. We fill silence with meaning, whether or not the meaning is true. The ancient Egyptians thought dreams were messages sent directly from the gods. They built entire temples devoted to sleep, where people would go specifically to dream on purpose, lie down in a sacred space, and wait for a divine message to arrive while they slept. The next morning, professional dream interpreters, essentially the psychologists of their era, would help decode what the gods had supposedly said. And some of their interpretations sound almost comedic to a modern ear. Dreaming of your own death was actually considered good news, a sign of a long life ahead. Dreaming of relieving yourself into the Nile was considered a sign of coming prosperity. Your crops thriving, wealth flowing in like water. It's a strange thing to realize that for thousands of years, dreams weren't treated like brain activity at all. They were treated like a weather forecast for your fate, something to be read and obeyed rather than studied and understood. This wasn't unique to Egypt either. Ancient Greek and Roman cultures built similar temples, called Asclepiae, where the sick would sleep in hopes that a god would visit them in a dream and reveal a cure. Entire medical decisions, for centuries, were made based on what happened in someone's sleep. Imagine trusting your health to whatever your mind happened to hallucinate the night before. Then in 1900, Sigmund Freud pulled dreams out of the divine and back into the human mind, for better or worse. His book, The Interpretation of Dreams, argued that dreams weren't messages from gods, they were messages from yourself. Specifically, the parts of yourself you were too ashamed to look at directly. His theory was that every dream was a disguised wish, something you wanted but weren't allowed to want while awake, smuggled past your own internal sensors using symbols. A key, a staircase, a train entering a tunnel. According to Freud, these were rarely just objects. They were coded stand-ins for desires, polite society, and your own conscience wouldn't let you admit to directly. His student Carl Jung pushed the idea even further, and in some ways made it stranger. Jung argued dreams didn't just draw from your personal desires. They tapped into something he called the collective unconscious. Shared symbols every human being is somehow born already carrying. The hero, the shadow, the wise old figure, the monster in the dark. To Jung, a dream wasn't just about you. It was about humanity speaking through you while your guard was down. For decades, this was the dominant belief. Every dream was treated as a locked message, a puzzle with a hidden answer, and if you couldn't decode it, you were told you were missing something important buried deep inside yourself. This idea sold millions of books and launched entire schools of therapy, all built on the assumption that meaning was hiding somewhere inside the chaos. Then brain imaging arrived, fMRI, PET scans, tools that could finally watch a living brain in the act of dreaming, and the entire story changed. Scientists stopped asking what a dream means and started asking a far more practical, far more biological question. Why would evolution keep something this strange, this energy expensive, and honestly, this risky, around for millions of years if it wasn't earning its cost somehow? Nature is not sentimental. It does not keep expensive systems around out of nostalgia. If dreaming survived this long, it had to be doing something.
Here's a moment worth pausing on before we go further. Think back to the last dream you actually remember. even a fragment of one? Was it about something you were anxious about? Something you were trying to learn or get better at? Someone you miss? Someone you haven't spoken to in years? Someone who isn't here anymore? Hold that thought for a second, because it's about to make a lot more sense than you'd expect. The leading theory in modern sleep science today is that dreams are your brain's save function. All day long, you absorb an overwhelming amount of information. A new skill you're practicing, a conversation that unsettled you, a small emotional wound you didn't even realize you were carrying until it resurfaced at midnight. At night, your brain sorts through that entire pile, deciding in real time what gets filed away into long-term memory and what gets discarded as noise. In one well-known experiment, researchers had participants practice a difficult 3D maze on a computer, then let one group nap and dream about it, while another group either stayed awake or slept without dreaming of the maze at all. The group that dreamed about the maze solved it noticeably faster afterward. The dreaming wasn't decoration sitting on top of the learning. It was rehearsal, active, functional practice, happening entirely without your permission or awareness. Then there's the darker, older theory, the one that probably feels the most familiar to you if you've ever woken up with your heart racing, ever dreamed you were being chased, or falling from somewhere high, or in some kind of danger you couldn't fully explain or escape. Evolutionary psychologists believe that's your brain running a survival simulation, letting you rehearse fear responses in a space where nothing can actually hurt you. Your ancestors who mentally rehearsed danger while sleeping, who practiced running, hiding, fighting, inside their own minds, may have reacted faster and more effectively when real danger showed up the next day. In that sense, a nightmare isn't a malfunction. It's training. Uncomfortable, unwanted, occasionally terrifying training, but training all the same. A more modern version of that same theory says we've simply swapped predators for people. Very few of us are being chased by actual saber-toothed tigers anymore. Instead, the modern nightmare is a fight with someone you love, a boss who's disappointed in you, standing in front of a crowd giving a presentation and slowly realizing something has gone catastrophically wrong. Different threat, same underlying rehearsal. Your brain running simulations of social failure so that if it ever actually happens, some small part of you has already lived through a version of it once before. And then there's the theory that explains why Paul McCartney woke up one morning with the entire melody of Yesterday already finished in his head, as though someone else had written it and simply handed it to him overnight. With logic turned down and your usual mental filters switched off, your brain is finally free to connect ideas that would never normally touch each other while you're awake and thinking in straight lines. Dreaming may be the closest thing your mind has to a creativity engine running with absolutely no restrictions at all. No rules about what's allowed to combine with what. This is also, famously, how the chemist Kekulé is said to have figured out the ring structure of benzene after dreaming of a snake curling around and biting its own tail. Awake, his mind was stuck in straight lines and known structures. Asleep, it was free to loop back on itself, literally, and hand him the answer. But here's the theory that actually changes how you see your own brain, maybe more than any of the others. Neuroscientist David Eagleman proposed something called defensive activation theory, and it starts with one genuinely unsettling fact about how your brain operates. Your brain is aggressively territorial. Brain regions are constantly competing for space and resources, almost like countries fighting over borders. If one region goes quiet for even a short window of time, nearby regions will start creeping in and claiming that space for themselves. In experiments where people were blindfolded for as little as 40 to 60 minutes, the areas responsible for hearing and touch already began invading territory that normally belonged to vision. Now imagine your ancestors sleeping in complete darkness for 8 to 10 hours every single night for their entire lives. That's 8 to 10 hours where the visual cortex receives absolutely nothing to process. Long enough, according to Eagleman, for other senses to start invading, and permanently claiming that territory for themselves night after night until eventually your vision itself could begin to weaken. Eagleman's theory is that dreaming might exist purely to prevent exactly that from happening. Roughly every 90 minutes, your brainstem fires bursts of visual signals directly into that region, just to keep it occupied and active, essentially sending a constant signal to the rest of the brain that says, "I'm still in use here. Don't take this over." Which means some of your dreams might not exist for any poetic or psychological reason at all. Just pure, quiet, biological self-defense, running on a timer, protecting a sense you'd otherwise slowly lose. So which theory is actually correct? Honestly, probably all of them, running at once, layered on top of each other. Evolution rarely builds an expensive system and then only uses it for one single purpose. Something that may have started millions of years ago as a simple defense mechanism for eyesight has since been repurposed, layer by layer, to also sort memory, rehearse fear, process unspoken emotion, simulate social situations, and every so often, seemingly by accident, hand you a finished song at 4 in the morning. There's one more piece of this that rarely gets talked about, and it might be the most personal part of the entire mystery. What happens when dreaming is taken away from you entirely? In sleep studies where researchers deliberately woke participants every single time they entered REM sleep, preventing them from completing that stage, even though total sleep time stayed roughly the same, something strange happened. People became more irritable, more anxious, had trouble concentrating, and struggled to regulate their emotions the following day. And on nights after they were finally allowed to dream normally again, they experienced something called REM rebound, spending significantly more time in REM sleep than usual, almost as if the brain was making up for lost time, insisting on getting back what it had been denied. It's hard to look at that and still believe dreaming is optional decoration. It behaves like something your mind considers non-negotiable. Here's what I keep coming back to. Out of everything we've covered, we've photographed black holes from millions of light years away. We've mapped the entire human genome down to the letter. We've built artificial intelligence that can write, draw, and hold a conversation. And we still don't fully agree on why our own mind runs a private, unexplainable film every single night, starring nobody but us, for an audience of exactly one. So tonight, when you feel your body go still and your thoughts start to loosen and drift, notice it. Actually notice it, instead of letting it happen the way it always does, without a second thought. You're about to walk into the strangest, most private theater that exists anywhere in the universe. A place where you can talk to someone you've lost and, for a few minutes, it will feel like they never left. A place where you can finally solve a problem you've been stuck on for weeks, without even trying. A place where you can ride a chicken to get bubble tea. And somehow, while it's happening, it will all make perfect and total sense. If any part of this sounded familiar, if you've ever woken up chasing a feeling you couldn't quite explain to anyone, holding on to the last edges of something that already started dissolving, you're not broken, and you're not alone in it. Your brain has just been quietly doing this every single night for your entire life, long before you ever thought to ask why.
Like to learn more about human psychology? Like, comment, and share this video. Subscribe my channel now. Thank you for watching.